us?
Ooh, please, no more.
Yeah.
So you're at
No
your
more of
max. Yeah, so I know, like on, so obviously we're doing a lot of work with Sid, and I'm on her Facebook a lot. And she puts up a picture, and the next thing you know, there's 500 responses of dudes.
Yeah.
And it's almost all dudes.
Yeah.
And it's those thirsty men that she was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that make you feel? Does it make you uncomfortable? Is it a little bit flattering? Is it upsetting? Is it something to just joke about?
Actually, I'm starting to realize it's kind of overwhelming because you don't really get to know who you really need to pay attention to.
Right.
Yeah. And so you kind of miss out on good guys. I think they get lumped into the feed, I guess.
That's
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
because the good guys, they're already. Well, I don't want to appear on the stalker chart, so I'm gonna stay under. They'll get lost in it. It's hard.
Yeah, because I
hard to
got
find good
penis
people.
picture too. That guy sent me a penis picture too.
See, I don't understand that.
Yeah, and that had no. I didn't even answer his text after he kept texting me.
Is he in political office by any chance?
No,
Sounds like one of our congressmen.
no.
I
And you know
guess-
that's an epidemic. The penis pics. You know that, right?
I've heard
Well, I
that
don't
it is.
exactly get a lot of those. Do
Yeah.
you?
I mean, I have, not lately.
It's only when
I-
you're
I think
dating.
I, like,
Yeah.
already, it's hard to say, but I think I already, like, put up that
Not your
wall.
anti-penis
like, don't go
wall.
there with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't. So I have in the past, but, like, lately I just don't give out. I feel like I
See,
try to
you
protect
probably
my
haven't
energy.
been dating. You probably haven't been. See, I just
No.
decided to date.
Oh, yeah.
So when I wasn't dating, I didn't have that problem. But when
Yeah.
you're trying to date, meet
Right.
different people,
Oh, yeah. I can see
it
that.
always
Yeah,
pops
I
up.
just officially started. I think I'm gonna date now too.
Yeah.
I was planning on being in Chicago this year, but I guess that's not gonna. So we're kind of planting some roots here, and I'd like to meet a nice, wholesome girl. I don't know if there's any of you guys out there. She's interested too. Not in a girl. or
No,
guy.
no girls, no girls. Yes, man.
Just double checking.
Yeah, I accept all flavors. No.
I would go. You know what? I'm not by myself with my buddies at the bar. So what were you gonna say?
Well, a little different from the stalking is I've had it to where there's an accusation about you, like with having this public life now, and you were saying, hey, just get used to that. And it wasn't something that I reported or I didn't do anything about it because I figured if this person was grabbing that much traffic from random people, that they may be interested in me and come see who I am for the public side, for the radio show, right? Opposed to, this is completely wrong and I've been wronged. It's somebody who obviously had a mental issue,
Yeah.
and it's claiming that I'm somebody that I'm not. I would think that that's something that you've been involved in, Dave, because of the movie, right?
On a professional level, and I'm also dealing with it personally, which I'll talk about. On a professional level, I lost my train of thought.
The fact of somebody trying to say you're not who
Oh,
you say you are. Yeah.
Well, just this weekend, I found someone that had taken my movie and a bunch of interviews and did a mashup of them to make me look crazy.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a thing they do on YouTube. It's called a you poop, I think, or a poop tube. It's on
Oh,
YouTube, and
no.
it's,
I've heard of it, yeah.
it's almost, for me, it's almost like a badge of honor. Like, okay,
Yes.
significant enough that some dude I don't even know is trying to discredit me. That is actually,
That's power.
Right.
Yeah.
They're talking
Right,
about
right,
you.
Right.
Yes.
Thanks for the attention.
I'm not, in fact, if someone comes out and they've got a pristine record, that to me is a red flag because everyone I've ever come across that's doing what we do, exposing this, whatever you want to call it, the secret government or the deep state
Questioning.
or the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. Everyone that is involved in doing that, they've all got they've got a litany of chalk marks from
Weird
like
things.
attacks
Yeah.
and the attacks are, I don't know exactly how this is working, but there is something spiritual about it, and that's the one that's going on in my personal life. Because right now, I'm and I want to have a trial, but a friend of mine, someone I've known for 40 years, like we grew up together, never had a problem ever. We've just always had a wonderful friendship, never even had a fight, never had a crossed word. There has never been anything but just love.
Yeah.
And this was someone that I considered a very dear. I was in her 3rd grade class. And a few months back, a few years back, she became pretty much best friends with my ex. And I've talked to her maybe once in 5 years. And I actually blocked this girl like 4 years ago from my Facebook. Because this is what I don't know. I don't understand the dynamics. All I know is you guys know where I am with the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
This was written about in the Bible, that this would happen, especially in the last days, that people that come out speaking God's word are going to they're going to be dealing with, well, the world is going to hate them.
Yeah.
And they're going to be dealing with people who sow discord. And that's another term, that's just another name for gossip. And that's something that I dealt with because it was this, even though this case that I'm going to be facing next Friday, and by the way, you guys are all invited. I'm thinking about covering it. And there's a documentary that's coming out this summer. I haven't told anyone about this because I was hoping not to bring it out, but it's part of a vow.
Okay.
So the best friend of my ex, we have a falling out last September after 40 years because my ex was spreading just the kind of rumors about a guy that doesn't matter if they're true or not. Once they're out there,
Can't change it.
You court of public opinion, you're guilty. And even if some of the people you used to still believe, it doesn't matter because it's now
there.
uncomfortable. You just get radioactive. And so her best friend, my former lifetime friend, files a stalking charge against me. So we have this falling out in September, which I think is a typical falling out. I was actually hoping we would, hey, we got a 40-year friendship here. Let's not, you're getting played by my ex. You're being manipulated by her. Just did not go over. We have a falling out.
Forgot the history you had.
And a few days later, I get she sends a registered letter to my house. This is strange already, because the last thing I'd said is, please don't contact me again and stay away from my son. And next week, I get a registered letter, which I did not sign for, nor would I have. Someone else in my house signed for it. Didn't even read it. I threw it in a pile. I was still a little fired up. And back at last September, it was the last of that. It took about 3 or 4 years to get over what my ex did in terms of the rumor she spread in my hometown, because my hometown's gone for me now. My family's been there since 1880, and I get nerves just driving into my hometown, because I don't I've already run into strangers who think they can chime in on the rumor that they heard.
Oh, no.
And I was at a doctor's office with my mom when some lady goes, "Hey, aren't you Dave Hooper?" And then it just says something terrible and walks out. My mom's like, "What the heck was that about?" I'm like, "This happens all the time." She didn't even believe it because I'd come home upset. So, and this wasn't the first time my ex had done this. She did this to her first. So I'm actually feeling good, though, because I want a trial.
You want to be able to, get your side.
And I don't know what, we've had 6 pretrial conferences right now, and I wonder if they've figured out yet that you don't have 6 pretrial conferences over a 1 email stalking charge.
Yeah.
Because the people that are looking at our files now, they're like, wait a minute. Because I've been documenting this for 3 years. Because I knew this day's coming, because we're talking about imbalanced people.
Yeah.
And without a doubt, I'm not a psychiatrist, but that is someone that I would consider not.
Well.
I would put it in the category of narcissist sociopath. Took me a few years to figure it out. God, such a good liar and manipulator, just unbelievable. If she used those skills for good, she could be a force. I mean, she's the best I've ever seen.
You could sue her for slander, right?
I could.
Yeah.
And we were looking at possibly doing it in in the form of a defensive action, because she's the type of, if she's on the defensive, she won't attack.
Okay.
And so last November, we exchanged emails. I'm like, look, why don't we just drop all this? I know you have a knot in your stomach. I do. Let's just have peace. She said, okay. In January, we reaffirmed it. Beginning of the year, let's have a great year. Let's focus on our son. Let's just stop this. I really didn't even want. I didn't want vengeance anymore. I just wanted peace. She says, okay. And then a few weeks later, I'm getting, police officers calling me going, there's a warrant out for your arrest because Sandy's XYZ filed. Well, it's public information now, so I can say the name. This old friend of mine, Sandy Skagger, who filed these charges. Yeah. And everyone's looking at it going, wait a minute. There's one email, and the day that I finally did read this cease and desist letter, I remember the day, it was November 12th. Because on that day, I sent Betsy a message. I'm like, hey, I just finally read Sandy's registered letter. She said, don't contact her again. I'd sent one email in October, not realizing what was in this letter. And all that email to Sandy said was, here's the impact you had on her life. And it was a 2-hour recording with my ex where she'd been in AA now for a week or two. And you could hear it in her voice.
Wow.
Like our family had a chance. And I don't really believe this girl, Sandy, is the one that pulled my ex out of AA, but it's what my ex told my entire family. So part of this case is, we've interviewed people in my family, and they'll be testifying that it doesn't matter if Sandy actually pulled my ex out of AA. My ex told us Sandy did it. Now, I don't think a person with a conscience could do that, but I don't know. I mean, when someone's in AA, would you ever think of, dude, you just met him, you don't need that.
Yeah.
Let's go party tonight. That's the picture she portrayed.
The sick wants to party with the sick. They don't want you well. Yeah.
So it was clear, because I'd been observing this, and this is what narcissists do, is they keep everyone around them in a state of agitation, always fighting with each other. That's where they get their power.
Yeah.
That's where they get. And when I run across someone like that,
I understand that.
my
Totally.
penis wall goes up,
Yeah.
and no one's getting through it, because those people scare the crap out of me, because they don't have a conscience. And this is what I think when the Bible says that there are the children of iniquity, like Satan will have a bloodline on earth. And the more I look at the Bible, that still seems very metaphorical to me, okay? Because we're now talking about hybrid people of some sort. We're in crazy world.
That's
But-
another story, hybrids.
Well, hybrids we could
That's
talk about
another
all
story.
day. I'm starting to wonder if I was married to one at one point. So what's interesting is, so the Bible says there's going to be this genetic bloodline. And that's why the wheat and the chaff, the wheat are the good people and the chaff are these evil people. And everyone's all mixed in. And I don't even think humans themselves know where they are yet. And I think that a lot of that is conscious choice. It depends on what God or what spirits you are trying to hook up with. And so the Bible says these people will be there and that they literally will be working for Satan. It talks about how they're going to undermine anyone that is a speaker of God's word, like preachers, and like these. They're going to go through unbelievable gossip and discrediting. It's just and then to see that actually happen. That's why I don't know the dynamics of how this is working. So because every time I look at the Bible, for me it's more and more literal. In fact, I haven't gone wrong taking it literally yet, even when they talk about things like giants and creation and angel beings from space, whatever. We're seeing all those things now. They've been hidden from us really, really well. So if it is real, what I found interesting is this. So have you guys ever heard of the reptilian gene?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You guys know what it is?
Yes, it's like the AB, the rarest blood line
It
on
is.
Earth,
AB,
right?
it's like an
15%
AB
of people
negative.
in the world have it.
Right.
Rhesus.
Yeah,
whatever.
the rhesus monkey
Yes.
gene, which is a real quandary for geneticists because there is genetic material in about 15% of the population that's not human. It is not human, and we've been struggling to find out where did this come from. And excuse me. So these people have some like funky traits. Like sometimes they'll have a little tail, a little extra.
I've heard that. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Extra
I know
finger.
that they can give
Web.
blood to everyone, but they die
Right.
if they get anybody else's blood.
Right. That's
Yeah.
where, I look. So my ex is AB negative. She has that same rhesus monkey, and I'm just sitting here going,
Oh wow.
huh? Because
A lot
I
of
don't
people
know.
don't know their blood types.
I
That's
don't
crazy.
know mine.
Really?
I don't.
I'm O positive.
Now, see, I
And
thought
B
that
positive.
was a royal bloodline, not a monkey bloodline.
Well, it depends on what group you're talking to, but I do believe if we were to synthesize all of these, it actually we're looking at the exact same scenario from different angles.
Yeah.
Yes, it is the royal bloodline, and if you listen
I
to
have also
John
heard of
Todd or if you listen to anyone that has researched the Illuminati, the royal bloodlines are different.
Blue Bloods.
Well, you've got credible people. The most credible I've come across is Putin from the USSR. That, and there are a lot of people that, I'm not saying this, I'm saying other people say this. People that are credible that probably wouldn't say this unless they're completely joking or there's truth to it. But that the royal family can shapeshift into these like reptilian-like.
David Icke.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he
Oh,
says.
Putin. You're talking about where he wouldn't walk her up the stairs, right? Something in it?
Something.
Yeah.
He
Seen her
scared the
hand.
crap out of the head of the Soviet Union. And think about how scary that would be.
Gloves
And what-
on.
So a lot of people think that this is actually what got Princess Diana murdered, because think about it. You marry this prince. Now maybe you know or you don't know beforehand, but you were raised in the same type of bloodline demonic family that your future husband. So everything might be seeming normal to you. But I think Lady Diana, like John F. Kennedy, they figured out what was
going on.
really going on. And when it finally hits you, and then all of a sudden, it just, in 1 second, oh, wow, our soul's at stake. This is eternity. Satan is real. Jesus is real. That's actually the truth of it. These people figure it out, and some of them are the highest ranking officials in the world.
Now, I think it was crazy. Sometimes you can find clips of Kennedy saying some really major stuff. Like, and he really kind of blurted it out really quick because he knew he couldn't really talk.
Well, in our in episode,
I just read something the other day about him. How I'm sorry to cut you off.
no,
About how he was finding out way too much information in a like, very fast rate.
Yeah.
I
Did you
think
get
it's
that from us.
Maybe.
Because there was a
I'm not
quote
sure where I
from.
read it from, to
I
be
put
honest
it in
with
a
you.
Timothy Leary, one of our little
Maybe
quote
that's what it
cards.
was.
Harvard professor Timothy
Yeah.
Leary, he's friends with Mary Pinchot Meyer, who's Jack Kennedy's lover. A week before Kennedy's killed, she calls up Timothy Leary, freaking out, going, they're going to kill him. He's waking up too fast. And you got to read the whole book. I mean, this is just, I get goosebumps. And he's just thinking, wow, that's a strange phone call. Go ahead.
you're talking about Larry's book.
Timothy Leary's book. yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, you could walk through life and continue to dismiss the mountain of stories that all these Harvard professor. When you put something down in writing, there's something human that happens that you can't. It's hard to have that not be true. Okay. Nonetheless, I still don't trust. You don't trust everyone.
Right.
But it's kind of like when 50 witnesses they're all painting a picture, and there's so much overlap that everything that overlaps you can count on, okay, this I can count on because, 82% of these people saw this, and they have no reason to make this up, or they didn't
Yeah.
coordinate or talk. And so, you know, when you start looking in these dark places, and we are programmed, literally, to not look. It is one of the many, many veils that keeps the truth protected, as Neil Armstrong said in 1994. Go ahead.
Nothing. I was thinking of something that happened recently, but let's finish this subject or this topic first. I was just thinking of something that's been bothering me the last
out
week.
with it.
Okay. So we've been having this big abortion debate around the country, right? Alabama writes the law, and people are freaking out because there's no incest or rape in that law, that it's just banned completely. I've seen that there's a major debate over the last 2 weeks, right? All about right to life, and you see some states that are writing essentially infanticide laws that you can, kill that child once it's already been delivered, okay? And I see really cool friends, right? That everybody has their own opinion, but you see all of this on social media, right? Where people are taking a side, okay? And I'm seeing not as many pro-life, okay, that I would assume, all right? So I was thinking that it's time for me to launch Planned Puppyhood, because most people that are trying to have puppies, they want to have one puppy or two puppies. And we see that there's puppy mills out there that are having litters of 8 or 10. And I want to start, I want to raise a nonprofit, because some of these puppies are going to go homeless, or they're going to be put to shelters.
I thought you were saying this
I
was
thought
like
he was doing a metaphor
too.
too.
I'm like,
It is a
where
metaphor.
are we going with the puppy?
Absolutely,
I can't wait for you to
absolutely.
bring it home.
Yeah, I want to.
Like,
I
you
want to
just
do a
wanna start
commercial.
Planned Parenthood for puppies.
Yeah, I want to do a commercial with all these cute puppies, and then we're
the
gonna.
best color man in the business for nothing, people.
Yeah, and then we're gonna wipe them out, right?
No, that's a serious topic because I'm an animal person too. But
Well, hold on a
we
second.
thought
Hold
you
on.
would say
Okay, so this is probably a pretty awesome debate that's about to happen. So we can agree that it's okay to exterminate that child, because
We don't agree with that.
Oh, I get what you're going with it. I got where you're
right.
going
So
with it now.
I agree that my dog didn't want to have those puppies because the neighbor down the street, the dog got out, came over, knocked up my dog, and I don't want him. So I should be able to zap him out.
Well, they do let you do that. Actually, you can go get them.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to, but maybe at 6 weeks, maybe when they're nice and fluffy.
I hate rescuing animals because of that. Because I'm a rescuer. I rescue all animals. When I take them to Humane Society, I ask them the realistic rate.
Yeah.
A lot of times they say they are going to kill them. So
Yeah.
I usually find a home for
That's
them.
how we got our city dogs. And are you like this? I sometimes, like when I'm watching a movie, I want the animal, I want the dog to survive more than the person.
yeah.
Person gets killed, no big deal. But oh my God, that dog
Oh, I
got
can't
hurt.
look at it. Yeah,
I need my handkerchief back.
Well,
No, I
look at
can't look at it.
a lot of people can't watch the commercials, right? You see these
Oh, I
dogs that
can't
are.
watch that at all.
Who the hell's got the camera? How about the guy that's got the camera instead
Oh,
of taking a
Sarah
picture?
McLachlan?
Yeah, how about you go up there and save that
Oh,
dog?
I hate
That
that,
ad
music. When you
pisses
hear
me
the
off.
music, you like,
Because you're trying to exterminate money from me. You're trying to get money out of my pockets by making
No,
me
but
feel bad about it.
That's all right.
I
Yeah.
like that one better than the Ethiopians. I haven't seen that.
That's
one.
what I'm saying. So we can watch people starving,
that had the
and it doesn't
commercial
bother
with
you,
the
but puppy dogs
African.
bother you.
That was like the puppy video to me. The
Archie
African.
Bunker's daughter.
Yeah, that was the same as the puppy
Yeah.
video.
Yeah,
They
what's
had
her
that
face?
music, and you're just like, oh my God, it's so sad. You just can't watch it.
Didn't they have
Sally
live
Struthers or
shows
something is her name?
last
Isn't that
night
Sally
of,
Sally
Yeah,
Struthers?
Sally Struthers.
Yeah.
What happened to her?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
She was a good humanitarian, though. No disrespect to her, because she was a great.
No, I don't mean any disrespect. I'm just saying how people's
No, I
hearts
was
will
saying,
pour
yeah,
open for puppies, harmless puppies. But when it comes to the debate of right to life, people are, hold on a second, no, you should be able to kill that baby right away.
Yeah.
It
That's
baffles
such
my
a touchy
mind.
subject.
Yeah.
and-
Well, it's not to be right, but it's out there, and I think maybe we should be debating it.
Right.
Oh,
not
I
our
wouldn't mind-
show. I'm saying it as a population.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that debate's easy now because for me, the words written in that book are the only truth. That's the only thing that has never lied to me.
Yeah.
Even my parents, the government. There's nothing. What else would you have? What do you have faith in? Do you have faith in your
Babies.
own skills? Do you have faith in your politicians? I mean, where is your faith at the end of the day? What are you counting on at the end of the day?
The children.
Your own.
We're at a 1.8 birth rate in the U.S. I mean, a 1.8. Like we cannot reduplicate ourselves. It's gone.
Right.
The U.S. Essentially is gone.
You know what though?
Well, that
I
It's
met
not
a young
gone.
lady. She was 19, and she had got pregnant by her father. So, for me, she loved her baby. He was beautiful, but that's a hard journey to have to be raped by your father and still have to
even
look at
imagine.
the baby.
totally agree with you. So, first of all, guys really aren't qualified to. Look, if a Bible didn't exist, I wouldn't even be involved in this debate because I think a woman should do whatever she wants with her body. I think we should have total freedom of our bodies.
I agree.
But when I discovered, wait a minute, we aren't created randomly. We were
Yeah.
actually created. That means someone does have a stake on us and ourselves. And this is the guy that puts life in things, and he doesn't do things by accident.
And her son was beautiful, so looking at the baby, I kind of say that she shouldn't have did it. I'm glad she kept the baby.
And some of those babies grow up to be anti-abortion activists because they're like, I'm the product of a rape.
Or they
My
could
mom
be.
kept me, and here I am today. And I've run some nonprofit, and I help solve the problems of the world.
Yeah, he might
You
be
just-
the new president.
You never know what God's got planned.
Right.
And every time humanity has ever gotten in trouble with God, it's the same thing over and over. It's because they don't listen to him. And so, when you are looking at the world from this biblical perspective, which I'm now still trying to get my arms around, but there's now, for me, without a doubt, there is a very serious spiritual war going on. And it's coming to a conclusion. This cannot go on for 10 more years.
No, I can't.
People are waking up too fast. Satan's plan degrades every day another person.
Wakes up.
It wakes up and at least starts to get some understanding of what, when these things start to happen, they will get it. But the Bible is really clear, like all throughout history, Satan, now there's something about our blood that is a lot more meaningful than I think regular people understand. Because number one, before Jesus got here and shed his blood, Satan was requiring child sacrifice from everyone. So you go back and look at all of the kings, all of the rulers of the world, going back to the beginning of time, even up through today. Go look through Hollywood and our own politicians. How many of them are missing a child because they lost one? And the numbers statistically compared to what it is for the population compared to what it is impossible for it to be all accidental.
Yeah.
So who knows though? Who knows? And I know like you lost a son and would never want to group all of that together because you don't know what someone's personal story is. But just looking at it at a macro level, something's going on there.
Yeah, it is.
You can see it in Hollywood and entertainment. These couples that go get 5 adopted kids from Africa, and then a
That's
few years
different,
later
yeah.
they've only got 4 kids around. You know what happened?
You're right about that.
And then how many people come out of these families
Wow.
going, oh, they sacrifice people. Like if you heard the John Todd, which we'll put more of him in. We're actually going to do a show just on him.
Well, I lived in Arizona for a year, and I was amazed at how many children were kidnapped on a daily basis. Not Amber Alert was every day.
Well, do you know how many kids go missing in this country?
So
We
that
did a
goes
show
along
on
with
this.
child trafficking.
800,000.
Yeah, it's a lot in Arizona.
Well,
going on with
people.
children.
800,000
It
people
is.
go missing a year.
A year.
That's crazy, and they can't even count for half of them, right?
So, well, the thing
Missing.
is,
Missing.
there's no
Yeah.
database that tracks it on purpose. So this is where a guy named Ted Gunderson comes into the story. You guys know who he is?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Ted
FBI.
Gunderson was the head of the Los Angeles FBI office, and he had 700 agents working underneath him. And it was, I believe it was during the Reagan administration, he was actually, his name was put in as a possible director of the FBI. Okay? Now, this is a guy that is almost on the level of J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, who said the exact same thing that Ted Gunderson started saying. So he was in charge of a unit that, they look at interstate murders. And he starts to just notice the fact that, holy cow, this murder was demonic. This murder had satanic writing on the wall. including like the LoBianca and the Manson murders. Okay, we're going to talk about those in a second. Maybe. So he starts figuring out, wait a minute, all these things these are all ritual sacrifice. First of all, why isn't that on the news? Why are we not seeing it on our police reports? Or why have we been instructed to never reveal this to the public? So he starts his own investigation. Now you know what that's going to do to his career. 'Cause you're looking under the covers of the real power base of the world.
Yeah.
And they're going to mess up your life. So he wasn't an FBI agent much longer. But a man like that, whose credibility, I mean, at some point, you're the one that's insane if your only explanation for this is they're going insane. Because when you hear them talk and speak, they're understandable, they're articulate. You know, if they're crazy, it's not manifesting itself in other parts of their life. And then for me, they have the magic formula, which is a massive discrediting campaign that is unnatural. Where like some people just make it their job to discredit someone full time for 2 years. Well, that to me sounds like
Somebody's on
a
something.
government contractor like Lockheed, which they're the biggest contractor in the world.
There's people doing that aren't politicians that don't even realize that's what's going on, and that's what they're manifesting around them because that's all they know, I think.
What do you mean? Like, explain that a little bit.
As far as the spiritual warfare goes, I think that a lot of people are just so lost right now in the world, they don't really realize what's going on and think that it's illusions. It's just a lot of illusions going on, you know. I don't know if most people think about the spiritual warfare that's going on, but there's discrediting going everywhere. That's going on in our society on a daily basis, you know.
Yeah, they're waiting for one word to be wrong, and I'm sure it'll happen here where someone will say, "Oh, well, Tony said this one day, and then the next day he said this." You know, I've contradicted myself. You know,
Right.
You know, and someone will discredit you like, "Oh, they'll take one show where Raina, you say something weird. It could be a slip out of context. Next thing you know, there's a slander campaign against the show, right?
Well, I'm such a nerd that
She's not a nerd.
I am kind of a nerd, but they're doing dark matter now, so I feel like they're creating a lot of negative energy so that they can
the
build up
antimatter?
Yeah,
Yes.
they need dark energy for
Yeah.
that.
You know, if you really
Like the
strip
vibrations.
philosophy
Yes.
down to its most basic, and if God is all good, and let's say that is a positive value of 1, okay? Can that exist without a balance in a closed system?
Well, yes, there's
Do you understand? This is a very deep question. Do you understand what I'm asking?
Well, it's destined to fail, definitely.
No,
Well, in some way, this is why some people think that God maybe isn't perfect. Because if God's perfect, why did he create Satan, who tried to overthrow his kingdom and became a liar?
Because God is awesome and he give everybody free will.
Yes.
Exactly.
God is
And
in your
this
heart.
is when it started to make sense to me. I'm like, oh.
It
Because
is free
everyone's
will.
counting
Yes.
on God coming in when you die and just yanking you and taking you to his place. And it wasn't until this business owner put it in business terms for me, and I'm like, oh, I get the metaphor now. Because if I have a great company to work for, and I know it's great, and I put advertising on, anyone can work, you can apply, you can get it, here's how you do it. You go through this process, you can work here. And if I run this place justly, and these people they jumped through all the right hoops, and I run a just company, you know, a just kingdom. How can I justify justice if I'm going to go apply a different rule to a bunch of people and bring them in like that? Like, I need a reason to do it. That's where Jesus Christ comes in. And here again, it was vital that he shed blood. Why does Satan require blood? Why does Jesus? Why are they so specific about blood? Why can you not have a blood transfusion 1 second after someone dies? Think about that. That ever occur to you?
Interesting.
oh yeah, it's got to be
Why?
live blood.
Yeah.
If someone
Yes.
passes away, immediately the blood's no good. Why? What left the blood? Why do we lose 21 grams when we die? Is that
Your
our soul?
soul.
Yeah, the ether.
Light does have matter. We now know that.
Yes.
So
I never knew that. I didn't know that about blood.
yeah,
That
there's
that it
others.
was
There's
completely
other things.
tainted.
There's how many blood types there are on Earth?
Like 5 or 6, something like
How
that.
many people were
7.
in the Ark?
5 or 6.
Oh, really? They
There's
saying the
8
same
blood
thing?
types on
Okay.
Earth.
Oh,
I find
8.
that strange.
Oh.
So
8. Huh.
then you talk to people that walk out of these Illuminati, anywhere where they are dealing with human sacrifice. Because where they're, you get this at the highest levels of witchcraft, at the highest levels of masonry. It's the same system overlaid onto many different groups. They're all they don't realize they're working in conjunction, but they are all, in fact, working in conjunction to fulfill Satan's plan for this one world order. And along the way, why does he care so much about blood sacrifice? It's hard to tell from the Bible. The Bible, when it says don't do something, it's not because God is a teetotaler. It's almost always for our protection. Even the things that had me not understanding him, like, why would you go in and tell the Jews to wipe out an entire tribe of people? Well, you got to really get into like Bible study to find out the little villages that God was asking the Hebrews to completely wipe out were Nephilim. They had hybrids in it. These are the things that survive. This is where the giants came from. Well, that's ridiculous until you go see all the giant skulls that have actually been turned up everywhere, hidden from us, just like 9/11 truth is. So the people that walk out of these, that have the strength, and the only ones that do it successfully do it under the protection of Jesus. So I don't know. It just lends more credibility. But they all say the same thing about it, in that is blood that's got, and maybe you guys know that what it is, the enzyme, but when you are in a state of fear,
Adrenochrome.
some form of and that's why these rituals involve incredible fear. And if you've ever heard like some of the rituals that have been recorded, like from Bohemian Grove, I mean, that makes your hair stand up. Now, they say it's a mock sacrifice, but why would you be even involved in a mock one?
And why does nobody know
A
about
mock
this
for
this
what?
They do.
ritual? Well, we do now, but I'm saying that all these people that are involved in it, here they are, they stand up and speak to us on podiums and all these different events, right? And your country fair, and they're out there, vote for me. And then last week, this dude is in a druid suit wandering around a owl. It shows you that every one of these politicians is two-faced right there. Like they take part in this weirdo shit, and you have no idea that guy does that.
You know, at the beginning, whenever you join these groups, it is always done, witchcraft. It is about the white witch, and you can be good, and we can tap into this power of the universe, okay?
Like The Secret. Like positive.
Yeah,
like
the secret actually,
Oh,
remember,
yeah, it's different.
Satan's a counterfeiter. So if it works in Satan's kingdom, it works in God's. And if it works in God's, Satan's counterfeiting it. And I think this has a lot to do with the blood, because these people that drink this blood, they say it's the most addictive high you can get. And once you have human blood once with this fear, adrenaline in it, you're addicted. Like, you go literally become a vampire. Maybe there's more truth to what these things are.
Well, you do know that they are starting, like Peter Thiel, the creator of PayPal, and I know he's worked with Musk as well, I think with Netscape or with PayPal, now wants to open up a bank for youth blood.
What?
To pay them, not like just like a blood donation, but to pay them good money. Because the youth blood has, say, like the stem cells, they believe that it brings you youth, like a vampire, right? They never die because they stay young.
I actually think it, like we said, have you ever seen the Queen? She must be 190.
Yes.
And she looks exactly like she did in World War II.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Well,
Maybe.
they have a conspiracy where it's the little boys, I think the age of 6, they have some kind of gland that's why they were kidnapping a lot of boys in down south a long time ago. You remember that? There was a rumor of that.
Well, there was the SNL scandal out of, I want to say,
Audley.
Nebraska,
Corps.
Oklahoma, which was the Jonathan Gosh case, which leads to Bohemian Grove and a bunch of kids saying that,
Boys Town.
George Bush, the guy that was president in 88 to 92, he raped a little boy and then shot him.
Oh,
mean,
no,
it just
I was
these-
talking about them they were mass killing kids for their blood, like you're saying. They got a special enzyme in them.
Possibly,
it's been a
and
big
maybe
thing
that
on that.
maybe is why it's child sacrifice, because
Yeah.
Satan used to have this this big statue of Moloch,
There it is.
and they would burn these hot coals, fires, to the point it would kill anyone that was placed in the hands of this statue, and all throughout history,
Was
I mean,
the boy-
before Jesus arrived. Because when he arrived, we then got the power to cast out a demon. Before he arrived, if anyone did anything that was messing around with demons, what did God say about it? Take them out of town and kill them. It sounds pretty severe, but knowing how it works, I mean, demons transfer through, you let them in through maybe objects you have or through things you do that open yourself up to it. So
Very good.
before we had the power to cast out demons, because the first demon that had ever been cast out of a human was done by Jesus Christ.
Legion.
I don't know if that was the first one, but Legion was certainly one of, and Legion really was, Legion I think was 7,000 was the number in the days of Rome. Could have been 10,000. No, that would have been because they decimate. Whatever this thing was had so many demons in them that when Jesus commanded them out, they go find this herd of pigs, and then all the herd of pigs
Right
go
off.
running off a cliff.
Wow.
Wow and why? And I now believe that I take it literally now. I really have faith on the things I do not understand. And I know we were talking about this because anxiety, depression, fear, all these things that, there's two emotions in the world. Everything filters down from those two.
Yeah.
You guys, what are those? You guys know what those are?
Love and fear.
Yeah, it's not love and hate. It's love and fear. All the emotions that are underneath the fear umbrella. Envy. That's different than jealousy. Some jealousy's okay.
Motivates you.
Forgiveness is under love. Anger is actually under love. Lies, manipulation, anxiety, depression. This is what's under fear. And I did not figure this out and then apply it and solve it. I accidentally stumbled over this, and looking back, I'm like, oh, this is what got rid of. I still have days where I feel some anxiety, okay? But I've had the days where you're anxious so many days in a row, it becomes a depression. And then you're depressed so many days in a row, you don't want to live. And then you start to actually think about eating lead or how to do it and maybe even try it. See, that's not from God. No way. And the funny thing is I had struggled with anxiety and depression my whole life. Outbursts, hot temper, I was not the most emotionally stable person, without a doubt. I'm happy to admit it. I'm not even going to say I am today, but I'm a lot more.
So
And
do
I-
you think that came from wanting people to validate you, or you
No,
just...
this is where my emptiness came from before, that really took me to the edge of suicide. Was I had been validated. I mean, people worked for me. They're like, oh, you're a great boss, and they're writing nice things in the paper, and and all these things I thought I wanted, and at the end of the day, they meant nothing. Like, it was when you put your hope in something,
Yeah.
and you get there, and it turns out to be nothing. You're in Mad Max, and you're driving across the desert for 10 days to get to the Greenland, and when you get there, it's, oh my God, that's where you're like, shoot me. I
That's
get
it,
that.
yeah.
I totally get that.
It's within yourself.
And I'll say this, because I've researched this full time for 8 years now. There is a spiritual side, and the one common denominator of The minute I knew God was real and I asked Jesus to get in my life, and I didn't even know exactly what I was asking for. All I knew was that he's real. He's real. The reason he came here, the reason for his appearance, I just found it, Satan. And from that day forward, it wasn't immediate, but I'll tell you this, I've never had that deep anxiety, that depression. Like, I should be feeling it now. I got my ex and my old friend are like trying to get me in trouble with the state of Michigan, and they're got criminal yada yada, and I might lose my son, and this place is always staring at a mutiny right in the face, and cash flow's tough, and I'm surrounded by crazy people. I mean, I should be on a couch right now with the covers on and 12 Xanaxes up. And there's something freeing about knowing
You're doing
when
the right
that
thing.
spirit comes in you,
Yeah.
and the dark spirit leaves. It's not like you necessarily feel it or you wake up looking different the next day. Because at first it gets hard, because I think when you ask God into your life, first thing he's going to go like, okay, you want me in, I'll be in. But you're not going to like it, because we got to separate you from this person, and this person, which means you're going to have to get another job, so I'm going to make you lose that. You're going to have to lose your boyfriend because, he's into spirit worship. You're going to, and he'll do it. Your life will, in a way, and mine it literally went to utter, if I was ever going to kill myself, it would have been about 4 years ago. And looking back on it, you start to see, oh my God, you see what he was doing in your life. Like,
You're arranging.
if you ask me, I won't be able to prove this till much later, but I think like he had to get me out of the presence of my ex, because that is, I'll tell you this, by the time she's having that second bottle of wine, I wasn't talking to her anymore.
Oh, wow.
And by the end, I was actually just talking to the demon in her. I'm like, Betsy, have a break. I'm talking to Jezebel, who's inside you. Just as a joke. She gets so because she was a different human being. I mean, what is that about us when we have cocktails that, think about it, we literally become someone else.
My
Spirits.
father's eyes would
It is.
turn
It is
red when he
spirits.
drink. Yeah, his eyes would turn
Spirits.
red.
And how funny.
That's why they call it spirits.
It has that name. Liquor is known as spirits.
And he tells us to be of sober mind.
And why does God, here again, oh, what a teetotaler. Don't be a drunk.
No,
Don't hang out with
not
the
to
drunk.
be a drunk.
And you got to understand how God operates. If there's a difference between he wants you to be a slave to him, not to any other vice. All right, now I'm a slave to cigarettes right now, but not to liquor, for instance. So I'm not here to talk about the what's the word I'm looking for? The profile of a perfect Christian, because not even close. Do not follow my example on this one. Just follow my words. But he's looking for people that just have faith in him. And even people that effed up horribly, if they loved him, he always forgave them. It didn't matter. From Moses to King David to
Peter,
I mean, the guy that
his number one
wrote
homie.
essentially the closing of the Bible. He wrote like 10 of the last, 20-some books. And he was an executioner against God's people. But see, I think this is what God looks for, is because it's like what you said about, hi, Rachel, pure heart. She has a pure heart. And
She does.
I think she does. It's just something you know. Now, if a pure-hearted person really believed they were working for good, you could see how Paul could be, when he was Saul of Tarsus, could be an executioner. You could see how good people could get wrapped up in the Nazis. I guarantee you some Christians were part of that system.
Right.
Yeah, they call it robber barons.
The robber barons.
Yeah. Ford,
That's
GM,
Yeah.
Bush, Prescott Bush.
But I used to post things to the soldiers and the police to let them know that you're getting paid to be a killer, and that's not gonna. When you get to heaven, he's not gonna say you got a check, so it's okay. And that's the one thing about soldiers. I think they need to think about what they do on this earth, and not just for money. You can say no. Even if you work for them, you can say no.
Right.
If it's a police officer and they say kill everybody, you can say no, and you can just stand there. You have a choice.
You do, without a doubt. And I don't have an opinion on that because I will now go with what's scriptural.
Yeah.
And there's something I do need to reconcile because one of the commandments is it's actually do not murder. It's not do not kill. There's a difference because there are some passages where God talks about how he actually, like, he wants you to, if you need to fight for your country. Like, he wants soldiers. He likes those types of...
But the history of soldiers has never been good. So the history has always been them taking. I don't believe God would support soldiers.
Well, God, then
Because
then
everybody's
how do
his
you...
babies. How you think he wants you to kill them? And I don't want nobody to kill anybody. I think everybody's my baby, too. So I don't want nobody...
Well,
From
you
God's
mean-
perspective, if eternity's real, and these are just temporary meat suits we got out for just a little wisp of time, preserving human life might not be that huge of a deal to him. I could totally understand that.
No, you got to think about what if you had a bunch of kids and some of them are bad and some of them are good. You're not going to say exterminate the bad ones. You're going to say we're going to work on those because those are my
Well,
babies.
of course, that's
I
what...
think he
that's the way
sees
we
us
need
all
to
as
look
children.
at- We need
But
to
look-
look at it, the world like that, so we can look at it like God looks at it to me.
What I'm saying is every time humans have started to make their own judgments, because we have no moral compass without a God. We don't. Without a God, Hitler was right.
Well, he had points. Hitler had
Without a God, we can kill anyone whenever we want to, because morality is within ourselves. I mean, if there is no ultimate judge, we have no barometer, and we are not capable of making our own value judgments. So every time humans have tried to, like, do their own plan is where we screw up. And sometimes God asks you to do things that don't seem to make sense. But he has, in the Bible, he has drawn up armies to defend Jerusalem. And I think that's where you got to have some faith in what he's doing, because we define, like, we think death is evil. Death could be deliverance for a lot of people.
Well, actually, I think that's what Hitler was doing in a weird way, because the mental health community are in pain a lot of times, and people are not there to take care of them. And so he was. It's some of
Without
his. It's like putting a dog to sleep. He was putting.
We want to always.
You mean
You're absolutely
the
right.
mentally challenged?
You know, he put a lot of them to sleep.
Do you
because
know
of-
that he got that from the eugenicists here, Margaret Sanger and
Wow.
Gamble, Procter and Gamble?
I didn't know that.
No.
That
No, and you can follow the people that financed these companies are the same people that financed Hitler, and you can follow their bloodline back to when Jesus called them the synagogue of Satan, and you can follow them all the way back to the days of Babylon,
Okay.
Satan's kingdom, where all of their Babylonian rituals began.
And when you go into this world order deal, the guy who runs the EU now, and he just spoke about, you know, how bad nationalism is, Juncker, he's the head of the EU. He pretty much owns, like, Switzerland or Sweden. He's that much. Number two, Juncker was the number two. He was the weapons guy for Hitler.
Oh, wow.
And here it is,
Oh,
down the
Juncker's-
line,
okay,
the
Juncker, the
Juncker,
family.
yeah, now he owns, this is the guy who's pushing this one world EU and not allowing, you know, the UK out, right? The Brexit, the whole deal. This is the guy. So essentially the flag, the EU flag created by Hitler, the Olympic symbols created by Hitler, Audi, the highway, the Autobahn, Hitler. So regardless of, you know, because that's not even to give him any type of fame, I'm just saying remnants have carried on even though they destroyed him.
Yeah.
See?
Oh, the ideology is strong. And look, I think Hitler was a run-up, a test. And he was counterfeiting.
He was-
He was going to have a 1,000-year Reich. Well, what's Jesus going to come do? He's going to have a 1,000-year kingdom of peace. Satan will counterfeit it. And that's what I think Hitler was a practice for the anti. They do practice runs.
Yeah.
You know, Oklahoma City was a practice run leading up to 9/11. Germany was a practice run leading up to what I think is going to be the New World Order. They did it in Germany. They successfully got a nation to, and that you you have to do it incrementally because we want to look at people as all good or all bad. Wrong way to look at it.
Slow.
Everyone has good and bad in them. And what are they going to expose themselves to? Good, maybe spirits, good or dark ones so you can't look at groups as they're bad or they're bad. From God's perspective, his people are amongst both sides.
Yeah.
And certainly if Satan's a counterfeiter makes sense because his people, they're on all sides. They're in the Russian government. They're in our government. They're in what?
It's just like these things come to me. Recently, we've seen some of the outrage in Congress, right? And they go after Omar about anti-Semitic, right? And then they go after this other person about being anti-Semitic towards Muslims. Well, that area is the Semitic language, the Arabs and the Jews. So if you start writing laws in this country that you can't speak out about two different peoples, well, then who do you get to talk about? Oh, the blacks, the whites, the Muslims. You're right. That's what. Watch when they start writing laws.
From a biblical perspective, because Israel's they've got enemies. They're surrounded by enemies, right? And the Bible predicted it. It said, Israel, it'll be reformed. That should blow you guys away. We're going to tell you who's going to announce it. We'll kick up the currency in 2,000 years. We'll add the language. I'll tell you some other things. None of your neighbors are going to be able to walk into Israel. And all these things are true. You can't walk from another blocked off. The only way to get it is by ship or airplane. The Bible said they'd be Tarshish. You follow who those guys are. Oh, well, that's the UK, which became the United States, South Africa, Japan, the European Union, blah, blah, blah. We have a good relationship with Israel.
Yep.
And who are Israel's enemies today? You follow those bloodlines back. The Hebrews that didn't finish wiping out the tribes that they were instructed by God to wipe out, those tribes lived on. And who are those people? The ones that are Israel's enemy today. They are the sons of, not Isaac, but
Seth.
Who's Isaac's brother? Ishmael.
Ishmael.
Oh, wow.
That's the Persians. That is Muslims. That is
Iranians.
Yeah, Iranians for sure.
Okay, so look at this. So the Israelis were pushed out, right, at some point before World War. It was before World War II, because if we look at, say,
they were
Hitler's,
pushed out in 70 AD by the Romans.
Okay, so then you filter in, say, like to Germany, right, and over whatever reason we choose that it's the Jews that are just right. That was his thing. It's the Jews that are creating all this, and they're the bankers, right? They're the coin brokers. That's part of the reason of taking them out, right? So if you move those people, if you move true Israelis out back in, what'd you say, 700?
70 AD was when Jesus is there. 33 AD says the Romans are going to destroy this city and this temple, and you're going to be dispersed. The Pharisees didn't believe him. 33 years after Jesus is crucified, Romans come in, do just that. The Jews are then dispersed all over the world.
Okay, so
and God said, actually, he predicted 700 years before the Romans did this. You can see it in writing. God's saying, Israel's going to lose their nation when my son comes. It's going to happen. 700, and the ones that have been following the scriptures knew it. So that day arrives, the Romans come, disperse everyone. But again, 700 years before even that happened, God had already said, but don't worry, I'm going to regather them yet again in the last days, right before the end of time.
Sorry, go ahead, sorry.
No, so, oh, damn, I was going somewhere.
End of days.
Yeah.
So he predicted that this nation would end up being reformed, which it was. And then when you start to, when you finally figure out, like, that's why 9/11 is important. If you could figure out that they lied to you on that, it's the key. You can now unlock anything you want. You can go find out who shot JFK. You can, all these mysteries,
traces back.
you can go find them. And it always traces back to, it's the same evil versus good. And it's just manifesting itself in, I still lost my train of thought. So
Okay,
what
sorry.
were you gonna say?
Okay, so we would assume that for all accounts, Israelis and those tribes around them would have been similar looking, right? Even though, I mean, we may have a few genetic differences, but we're going to be pretty similar looking, okay? Then you force out the Israelis way back then. They move into, say, Germany, Ashkenazi, right? That's German
Well,
Jews?
different tribes went different places. The
Okay.
Ashkenazis, which were, I think, the spin-off from the Edomites, this is ultimately who became the synagogue of Satan. This is the Illuminati. These guys went north into Europe. And here's what's funny. The first place they settled was in Eastern Europe, where you've got the Transylvanias, essentially, or
Right.
and it's funny because these in the Bible, these were blood-eating hybrids, essentially. And where do
Ivan the
what does
Terrible.
vampire lore come from? So, oh God, there's one thing I wanted to. I know. You'd mentioned Hitler and the Jews. So it doesn't get press, but what group of people have suffered more mass deaths than any other group
Palestinians.
in the 20th century?
Palestinians?
Not even both. Not
I
even
thought
close.
the Mexicans, I don't know what, or Spanish, I don't know what the.
There's a group that has suffered 8 million deaths via martyring.
The Jews.
Christians.
No.
80
Oh. I thought you
million.
was going to say the Indians.
Hang on. I'm not discounting that. I'm making a point here about. So, if Satan's real, he probably hates the Jews. In fact, I know he does. Because this is God's chosen people. Now, they were chosen just to get God's word to the rest of the world. They've screwed up that job badly. And God has punished them pretty heavily, without a doubt. But he still loves them. And Satan knows that 1 out of 3 were lost in the Holocaust. And in the end times, 2 out of 3 are going to go. So they're about to go through an even worse time than the Holocaust. But what's interesting is the two groups that Satan's always targeting, it's the Hebrews, who are hated, and the Christians, who are going to be hated. That's on the way. So you go back to World War II, because people think the death camps were rocking like before the war started. Mm-mm. There were labor camps, yeah. But the death camps didn't get going until 1942, which is very interesting because war starts in 1939 on September 1st when Hitler invades Poland. He goes and he gets Austria. He essentially unites this bunch of tribes into the nation of Germany for the first time. And it looks like he's about to take over the world. He's got access to unending money. Thank you, Illuminati. And he's got all of his pieces in place. He gets to Stalingrad. They are 10 miles away from Moscow. Russia is about to fall. And the Russians, they didn't have the technology yet. They were caught off guard. They didn't expect the Germans to cross all that land. That is their defensive wall, is because these supply lines were impossible to keep. And they didn't even have enough weapons for all their soldiers to hold. They had 1 gun for every 10 soldiers. And their instruction was you advance. And I don't care if you have a gun or not. You pick up a gun of a dead guy and you keep advancing. And if you turn around, we got other guys waiting to shoot you. They just put these guys. That is how Russia, they did it through manpower. But they ultimately, by inches, they turned the Nazis back in the winter of 41. And from here on out, the Nazis are in retreat mode. They already, at this point, when they lost the armies that Hitler left at Stalingrad, he's like, you don't deserve essentially to be in my. If you can't fight your way out of it, you're screwed. So he lost his generals. He lost a massive force. That's when the generals around him started going, we're screwed. We're in trouble. You got guys like his insider Rudolf Hess stealing an airplane, flying it to Britain, landing where? At an Illuminati guy's house. How strange is that?
Rudolph
So
Hess
1940
is related to somebody I know.
Oh, makes total
Somebody I'm
sense.
very close to, actually.
It's generation.
I'm just saying. I don't.
Germany is now losing the war. Everyone recognizes this. They're throwing more and more resources into combating this Russian force that's gaining strength now. I mean, now they are about to get poured on. And what does Hitler do? What program does he suddenly kick up in 1942, when they're going to lose the war, the death camps, that's when they got going. Now, that to me says demonic. Like that, there's something demonic about that. And I think the plan was if Satan could, in fact, exterminate all the Jews, then God's prophecy of reestablishing Israel couldn't
Couldn't
to pass.
happen.
And Satan's come very close in history. We talked about the flood. He contaminated all of humanity with this genetic mixing. That's what the whole Bible was about from the beginning. Noah wasn't a good guy. He was perfect in his generations. And you go look at the Greek word for he was clean, spotless.
His blood.
His bloodline had no defects. So Satan got to within 8 people
From destroying it.
of proving God wrong, of beating him. And he thinks he's going to do it again. I mean, when you look at, if you listen to John Todd or listen to some of his recordings, this is probably easily the highest ranking Illuminati member to ever defect. And he was actually in with the Rothschilds. But he's not the only one. There's hundreds of them. You'll never, Anderson Cooper will not tie him up for you and show them to you. But he was very clear that these people expect to beat. They're
Nah.
actually, remember John Todd said they're planning for an alien invasion?
Yeah.
What, you know what the alien invasion is that they're planning for? It's Jesus Christ's invasion. That is the one that they are going to try to repel. Because that is what Armageddon is. It's not a battle between humans. At the moment that all these armies are around Israel, and Israel's down to its last bullet, it is going to lose, and literally only a miracle will save it. This hasn't happened yet, by the way. I fully believe it will because everything else written has happened. I absolutely believe this will happen. What time we got?
You got about 25 minutes.
So
I don't even give us
7 minutes.
Israel is going to be surrounded
Fucking things
by,
off again.
what is it, a 200 million man army? Now, even up through the 1900s, you're reading this in the Bible. Now, that takes a lot of faith because there's no Israel. So how are they going to get an army of 200 million to attack a nation that doesn't even exist? I mean, it's like me predicting the Akron Bulldogs are going to win the Super Bowl 5 years from now. You'd be laughing at me. They're not even a team yet. You know what I'm saying? Yet it all happened. It's all, I mean, look at, have you ever seen all the military bases that surround Israel? Dude, we are in the end times. So this last battle of Armageddon, it is the army that shows up from it's God's, Jesus' army. This is when he comes and he will save Israel. The battle will only take about 5 minutes, it seems like, if I'm reading the scriptures properly. And all these 200 million people, they were actually, their intended goal was to defeat the army coming from the sky. Satan thinks he can do it. And I think that's why we've got all this black budget technology that is so far advanced over what we... First, it's going to be used to trick us, to make us think Jesus arrived the first time. But that's going to be the Antichrist. And I think it is going to be in the form of little
The
green
digital.
men. I mean, everyone seems to be getting ready for this thing. All the other back-end information totally ties the breeding programs, and then he's going to use that technology
The test.
to try and stop the real coming of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
And that's where I don't think Satan has a damn chance. And I think if you are with him, you are with you're with the losers, baby.
So when we see this pushing, right? So say we see Israel, Trump reestablishes the capital, or our embassy in the capital. We now have the quick resettlement of the Golan Heights, and now recognizing Israel's rights for the Golan Heights. Part of the synagogue, they have to have that attack. So that attack has to happen, okay? Or the end times, that's what happens. So say these devil worshippers or Luciferians, they're going to keep testing in order to push that timeline. Because the only chance that Satan has is to try to trip up Jesus and coming in early.
Yeah, look, if you
That's
ask
what
me,
he believes.
I fully believe if Satan could have nuked the world by now, he would have. The Bible talks about, essentially the hand of protection. I think that's the Holy Spirit. The Bible also talks about it's going to pull it away, and every sign that is going to be around when it gets pulled away is in play right now. And what I see evil do on a personal level to get you in a state of agitation with the right people and to get you liking the wrong ones and to create turmoil and create fighting, which drains energy. Because you don't have time to go looking for God when you're worrying about how to pay your bills.
Yeah.
Okay? He does the same thing with nations. So when you go back and you really read the history of, what happened to the USS Independence, I think that was the name of the ship, the ones that Israel supposedly attacked and sank. The Cuban Missile Crisis, for instance. See, this has evil written all over it. Kennedy's about to meet with Khrushchev. And what is we already know what I think about the CIA. That's where
Crashes
the
the
Nazis
plane,
went. That's
right?
your ideology. CIA's in control of the U-2 program. They send a U-2 spy plane over the Soviet Union that gets shot down.
Yes.
Now, why was it shot down? We think, the Russians had some great missile. Wrong. Gary Powers' plane was underfueled on purpose. He was meant to get caught because Khrushchev and Kennedy were about to have a peace conference. So the CIA got in the way of that by orchestrating the U-2 plane incident. And the funny thing is you like to use the same people. And, Squeaky Fromm was a member of Manson's cult murder family. And a few years later, she gets by the Secret Service and gets this close to Gerald Ford and almost kills him.
Wow.
Her gun just didn't go off.
Wow.
So we know that they used Oswald to kill an enemy of them, Kennedy, who, if you listen to John Todd in 1977 saying Kennedy got saved 3 months before he died, then you read Mary Pinchot and Timothy Leary's books 20 years later, they don't even know who John Todd is, and they're like, yeah, he got saved right before he died. It just gives credibility there. So the CIA tries to, I think, wants to start a war. And what was the Cuban Missile Crisis? Same damn thing. The Central Intelligence Agency is trying to inflame the Russians. And this was after the Bay of Pigs. And what was the Bay of Pigs? Well, and remember those nations that don't have a central bank yet, Cuba? They're still on the list. I mean, they're one of the last, 3. So the CIA does an invasion it's their operation. They invade Cuba. And they assume that once they've already committed the U.S. to a battle with Cuba, that Kennedy will have to support it through the air. And he's going to end up getting the Navy and the Air Force and the rest of the military involved. And this is where Kennedy really pissed off the CIA because he didn't send the backup. He let all those CIA guys die because I think he knew he was getting played. And talk about what a tough situation for a president. But overall, I think at the end, the report card in history was he made the right move. And the only reason the Cuban Missile Crisis didn't actually turn into World War III is because his brother contacted a Soviet spy, and they created a back channel of communication to Khrushchev. And they're basically like, we don't want to start war. And Khrushchev's like, we don't either. We're getting pushed into it. And when you understand that game, you can see it with individuals, you see it with nations, you see it with organizations too.
I think we're seeing it now. You see the manipulation of Trump and Russia and Iran and North Korea. They're pushing all these PowerPoints to see how we as a nation or our president acts, and then try to turn the screws in ways to just keep drumming up drama
And
that
look,
we
it could
can't
also
get our
be-
own stuff going.
John Todd said something that just occurred to me when I was editing the last show, because he's like, whenever you see something in the news that's getting a lot of attention, because something else is going on. Okay, that's a blanket-ish type statement. And I'll close out with this thought. But there's these two stories going on that serve just about everyone in the United States. One is what we were talking about on air, the Mueller investigation. This thing's been going on for a while, right? What's the counter to that? The one that appeals to all the guys like us that question things. Oh, all of a sudden, Q now. He keeps promising and promising and promising. You're going to see justice, you're going to see justice. And the longer that goes on, the more I think we're getting played, and Trump maybe is the last Trump. That was written in the Bible. And he might be the one that kicks off you know, the 70th week of Daniel. Go figure out what that is. At the end of the day, folks, what camera am I looking into? If Jesus is not real, it's not a big deal. If Jesus is real, it's the biggest deal you'll ever have. My advice is to not let random chance or what was handed down by your parents or what your buddies think determine your eternal soul. This is something personal, and you've got to figure it out for yourself, and it's why we do what we do. It's not for the glory, trust me. Get good with Jesus, figure out why he came here and who he is. Anyone else have anything else to add?
And listen to
Thanks
your
for
inner
tuning in.
spirit, because it always will
Yes.
guide you, definitely.
As long as it's a good spirit. If you got lousy ones, it's a terrible guide. So I'm gonna.
Oh,
I just
okay.
put a
Thank you,
grain of
Jesus.
sugar.
Listen
I
to
put
your
a-
heart.
We're out of here. We'll see you guys next week.
Guys,
Good
take
one.
it easy.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yes,
401 show.
yes. And you're right about that. Always.